Hi everyone, this is Belal Khan and you are watching Simplified Coding. So we created the user interfaces for our login and sign up screen. Now let's move ahead. So we are trying to implement MVVM, that is Model View ViewModel Architecture Pattern. And it says at the top we have the views or the UI that we designed, which is activity login and activity sign up. Right now, our task is to implement the user login functionality. But remember, we cannot do everything inside this login activity because we need to follow the architecture pattern and we need to separate the concerns. That is, this activity should contain the logics that are only responsible for handling the UI elements. So now, first think about what are the tasks that are involved when a user logs in. So when a user logs in or a user wants to log in, user opens the app, user enters the email and the password in the app, then we get the email and password from the UI and we send the email and password to our RESTful API or web services to authenticate the user. And then from the server we get the response back that whether the user is authenticated or not. So this is what happens when a user logs in. So this part, when the user enters the email and the password, is directly related with our UI and we can code this thing in our login activity. But this part where we send the email and the password to our web server, that means we need to perform a network call. We cannot put this thing into our activity, and this part we need to separate out from our activity. And as our architecture pattern says, at the top we have the activity or the UI, and the UI is directly dependent on ViewModel. So what we will do, we will send the email and the password to ViewModel, then ViewModel will send those things to repository, and then repository will perform the authentication. So this is how we need to do it. Maybe it is confusing to you, but that is how it should be done. And it is actually very easy. So when we will write the actual code, you will understand everything. So let's do it. So this is our login activity. And inside this activity, we can get the input of email and password. But for getting the input, we will not use the traditional way, that was get text from the edit text. So we will not do it like this. Instead, we will use the two-way data binding to get the input automatically. And when you want to do this, you need to create a view model for your activity or fragment. In this case, we have activity. But creating the view model part is always the same. You just need to create a class, and I will create a class inside this auth package. So right click, go to new, select Kotlin file class, and I will name it auth view model, and this is a class. Now I will use this same auth view model for login and sign up activity because the functionalities are pretty much the same. When you want to create a view model, you need to extend view model to your class. So I will extend view model in this auth view model. Now inside ViewModel, I need to get the email and the password from the UI. And to do this, I will define two string variables. So define var email of type string and the initial value is null, and that is why we have a null safety operator here. Then the same way we will define password of type string and the initial value is null. Now these variables will be used for getting the email and the password from the UI. But we have a button as well. And that button, when clicked, we need to perform the login. And for this operation, we need to define a function here. So I will define fun on login button click, or you can name your function anything. But because this is a click function, you need to pass view as a parameter here. This is very important. Now inside this function, we will check if email is null or empty, or password is null or empty. So if this is the case, what we will do? We will display an error message. But how? We are not inside an activity. So I will tell you how you do this. But after displaying the error message, we will stop the further execution. And for now, just for this video, if the control comes outside this if, we will consider it as a success or authenticated. So let's write success here. So we have the function, which is our onClick function, and we have two variables to get the email and the password. Now if I want to use this auth ViewModel to my activity login.xml, then what I need to do is I need to convert this layout as a data binding layout. And if I want to do this, I need to cut everything. So I will click here to collapse this tag and I will cut everything. Control X. Now I will create a layout like this. So first we need a layout tag if we want to use data binding. Then inside the layout tag, I will paste the thing that I just cut. So paste it here and now expand it. Now I will cut all the namespaces from here and I will paste it inside the layout tag. That's it. Now this layout tag has two elements. First one is data, where we define all the data that we use to bind in our layout, and the next one is our actual layout that starts from coordinator layout. And I will also give an ID to our coordinator layout. So let's give it an ID and I will give it the ID like root layout. That's it. Now you might see this problem as well, and the problem is the layout is not getting rendered, and I guess it is a bug with the new material design. So if you are facing something like this, go to design and change your app theme to app compat light no action bar, and it will work. You see, it is working. So I don't know, maybe it is a bug, but it is fine now. Now inside the data, we will define our view model. And to define our view model, we use the variable tag. And for the variable tag, we need to define two properties. The first one is the name of our variable, and you can type any name. So I will type view model. And for the type, you need to write the full path of your view model class. So in my case, it starts from net.simplifiedcoding.mvvm sample app. So I will write here net.simplifiedcoding.mvvm sample app.ui.auth and then my auth view model. So you need to write the complete path here. It is very important. Remember this thing. Now we have the view model in our layout. And now we can use this view model to send the input values to these variables, which are email and password. So let's see how we do this. To do this, come inside the edit text, and inside the edit text, we will define one more property. And this property is Android text. Now for the text, we will write @ equals to, and then we will put curly braces. And here we will write ViewModel.email. Now this means whatever value we will enter on this edit text, it will be assigned automatically to our ViewModel.email, which is this email var. Pretty simple, right? And the same way we will do for password. We just need to change this email to password. And now we will come inside the button. So this is the button, and here we will define Android on click @ then curly braces, inside the curly braces view model, then double colon, and then the name of our function. So I will do some copy paste to make sure I don't write or I don't make the mistake of misspelling, because if you write a different name there, it will not work. So we need to write it exactly like this. So Control C and Control V. Now whenever I will click on this button, this function is called. But how we get a callback from this view model to our activity to display the error or success message? And to do this, we need to create an interface. So inside the auth package, I will create a new file, which is Kotlin file, and this time I will create an interface, and I will name this interface as auth listener. Inside this interface, I will define 3 functions. The first function is fun on started, because the login is a network operation and it will take time. So when the operation is started, we need to display progress bar to the user. And that is why we need this function to know when the operation is started to display the progress bar. So we have fun on started. Then we have fun on success. Now this function we will call when the authentication is successful. And we have one more function on failure in case of any failure. And when the operation fails, we need to get the reason why it failed. So to display the reason, I will define a message of type string to this function. Now I will implement this auth listener to our login activity. So I will implement auth listener here. Now because I implemented the interface in our login activity, I need to override all these functions. And to do this, just press Alt Enter and then select implement members and select all the 3 functions. And I will remove all the to-dos, and I will cut everything, and I will put it after the onCreate function, because this is the way I like. So everything is fine. Now for now, I will just display on started, on success and on failure as a toast. And writing toast every time like toast, then make text and then show, it is a headache. Okay. So that is why I will create an extension function to display toast. And to store these kind of functions, I will create a separate package inside my main package. So I will create a package named util. Inside this package, I will create a file and I will name it viewutils. And inside this file, I will create an extension function for context. So I will write fun context dot toast, and toast is the name of the function. And to the toast, I will pass the message that I want to display as the toast. That's it. Now here I will make a toast. So toast make text, then this we can pass this for the context because this is an extension of context. Then the message and then the length of the toast, and then finally show. Now I can simply call toast to display a toast. So come back to login activity, and here I will write toast login started, again toast login success, toast, and in case of failure I will display this message. So let's display that message, and everything is fine. Now I need to get this listener into my auth view model. So that is why I will define one more var here, and this time it is a var auth listener of type auth listener, and again it is nullable and the initial value is null. Now when we will click on the login button, we will call on started. That means the login task is started. In case the email or password is empty, we will call on failure and we will pass the string like invalid email or password. In case it is a success, we will call auth listener dot on success. That's it. Now we need to add this listener, and we can do this inside login activity. But first we need to get the view model, and we also need to bind the view model to our activity login. And if you want to do this, you need to remove this set content view, and you need to get a binding instance that is generated automatically. So to do this, you need to write val, then your val name, you can write any name. So I will name it binding equals to, we will use data binding util dot set content view. This time it will take the first parameter as the current activity, and because we are inside an activity, we can pass this. Then for the second parameter, it takes the ID of our layout, so we can pass r.layout.activity login. That's it. Now it will return us an instance of activity login binding. You can see it is here. Now this class is automatically generated, and the naming convention is according to the file name of your XML file. So in my case, the name of my XML file is activity_login. So that is why it generated activity login binding. So this is the naming convention. Now we have the binding. After binding, we need to get the view model. And to get the view model, you need to create one more val view model, and you will get it from ViewModel providers. And you have two classes, one is ViewModel providers and one is ViewModel provider. Make sure you use this first class with an S. So we will use ViewModel providers and then auth. Now this auth function takes the current activity as the parameter, and as we are inside an activity, we can pass this, and then we will call the get function to get the view model. And inside this get, we need to define our view model class. So here we will write auth view model class.java. That's it. We have the view model. Now we will set this view model as our binding view model. So we will write binding.viewModel equals to our view model. Now it will bind our data with the UI. But in this case, we are just getting the data from the UI. Now we also need to define the auth listener to our view model. And to do this, we just write ViewModel.auth listener, which is this auth listener. And we will assign it to this, because this current class contains our auth listener. And everything is fine. Now if you will run your application, let's run it. Now let's try clicking on the sign in button. You can see we are getting the message invalid email or password. So what is happening here? This function is getting called. So we are getting on started the callback that we have inside our login activity. Then the email and password was empty. So again it is calling on failure, and we are getting the message invalid email or password. If we put a correct email or something inside email and password edit text, because we are just checking if it is empty or not. So if this is the case, it will call on success. You can see login success. So it called this function, and from here we are displaying the login success toast. So this is how it is working. You see, it is pretty easy. We separated out the logic from the UI. So now inside our auth view model, we have the email and the password. Now the auth view model will interact with our repository to perform the actual login operation. But we will do this thing in the next video. So that is all for this video, friends. I hope you are getting it. In case you have any question, let me know in the comments. And if you think my efforts of creating these courses was something, then please like this video and tell your friends to subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching everyone. This is Bilal Khan now signing off.